because I think I'm in a season of truth. When you tell the truth, people actually listen.
But the fears that confuse us in that situation, and these fears that are dressed up as these niceties, we say, oh, but I want to be kind. I don't want to be mean.
But you've gone off and found your pal and you're having a wee chin wag and a wee whinge about this situation. You're venting, you're letting it all out, but you're not going to tell that person directly, right? And then what happens there is I take it home with me. I ruminate about it. It kind of affects me still. I build up resentment. If it happens again and again, I'll start to make this person into a bit of a villain.
Being honest is the most productive and professional thing to do, but also the most loving thing to do. Allow them to have whatever emotional reaction might come with that, but give them the choice. People pleasing is lying.
Hello, my beautiful friends. My name is Dr. Becc.
And I am Kristeen Barker, and this is Am I Doing It Wrong? A podcast for doctors by doctors. Dr. Becc is a mindset coach and medical doctor who specialises in liberating driven professional women from the limitations of perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and people pleasing. She's basically the cheat code for getting out of your own way, showing up authentically, and living a life you're proud of.
And Kristeen is a medical educator and nephrologist who creates resources for doctors in training that I truly think are an unfair advantage. She makes complex topics super simple and takes the pain and uncertainty out of passing your medical exams. Kristeen and I connected a few years ago via our online platforms, and over the years we've discussed countless highs, lows, and in-betweens of doctor life. And in doing so, we've experienced firsthand the power of vulnerable conversations to show us where we're getting in our own way and underestimating our capacity.
So we want you to be part of the conversation and experience these same results. Every week on the pod, we'll be bringing you conversations which shine light in dark places, normalise the doctor journey, ease unnecessary suffering, and give you actionable steps to thrive in all facets of your life. So grab a cuppa and get cozy for this week's episode of Am I Doing It Wrong? The podcast for doctors by doctors. And welcome everyone to another episode of Am I Doing It Wrong? The podcast for doctors. And we have an absolutely juicy little mini episode for you guys today, but it's been something that's been on our mind. And today we are going to be talking about how you need to be telling the truth and the absolute beauty in truth. And this came up for me because I think I'm in a season of truth. Some of it was accidental at the start, but more and more, it's like I'm being shown these things and I'm using truth a lot. And the more I am faced with these situations where I'm telling the truth, the more I realize that it's actually a beautiful, beautiful thing, and it actually enriches my life and my relationships. So I wanted to share that today. So I guess I might just start by telling you guys a little bit about the accidental truth telling. So I wonder if any of you have been in seasons of your life like this where you're kind of at the end of your tether. But I was having, over the last year or so, overseas in Scotland, my parents and my brother have been having a few health issues and they've been worrisome. And it's been like a real cognitive load. And what I noticed, especially after months and months and months and months of this, when I was in work meetings and, you know, those kind of usual work tensions, conflicts, just stuff coming up in work meetings, we've all got those things. What I was finding is that a past version of me would have been able to be more kind of diplomatic and kind of use more flowery language and kind of like really think about how I was going to make everyone in the room feel happy whilst I said whatever it was I had to say. But it was like in that process of just being kind of worn down by other things, I was feeling like my threshold was down and I wasn't able to make everything all super pleasing to everyone. So I just didn't have enough energy, I guess. And so I was telling the truth a lot more or being a lot more candid in the way that I was speaking. And what I would notice is that it would be received better and it would land better than if I had said it the way I used to say it, which clearly sounded like it lacked some kind of confidence or something. So that was how it kind of started. But then recently I've had other situations where there have been some like interpersonal conflicts or things to smooth over. And certainly I can call upon lots of things in my past as well. And we'll probably get into some of those little examples as we go. But I'm just realizing that truth and telling the truth is so, 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 so beautiful. But I guess before we come into all those examples, Becc, do you have any experience with this recently? Is it just me that's in a season of truth, or has this been coming up for you as well?
I'm hearing how you describe this story, and I'm thinking about how this applies to us so widely. I think definitely in the medical profession as a service-based, other-focused industry, but particularly for women. And this idea that we want to be pleasing towards other people, kind, it's rooted in such a beautiful place. And that's actually something when I coach my clients who are leaders in medicine, they often come to me at first with what seems like this conflict between being kind and warm. They want their people to want to come to work. They want their people to have a pleasant experience at work. And it seems to be in conflict with them being able to be an effective leader. And I'm just recognizing how our priority of this kindness and this pleasing is something that can commonly compromise this clarity that you're talking about, this honesty that you're talking about with people, because these rules about being kind and pleasant, about being pleasing, seem to come first. And then we try and make the clarity, the candor fit within that. And I think it's a very difficult task that we put on ourselves. And hearing you talk about how you had, I hear that you worked quite hard, definitely cognitively, you're working hard to maintain that kindness and pleasing other people. You can see so clearly how effortful that is and how vigilant you have to be to do that in these complex roles of not just clinical medicine, but leadership in particular as well, working with other people. And it's not surprising to me that our first experiences of candor can often come up in the way that you did when you just got to the end of your tether. that was the actual thing that prompted you when you actually had no other option. And all the other kindness and the pleasantries went out the window because clarity had to come first and you needed to speak what you needed to say at that time. So yes, it applies to me, but I'm just thinking right now about how it applies to so many of us. And certainly it comes up a lot of the time with my coaching clients, this challenging conflict of what we think about as kindness and pleasing other people and being candid, being clear and honest.
Yeah, but it's fascinating as well, isn't it? Because like what I was finding in those kind of like the more like work meetings and things, I was finding that when you tell the truth, people actually listen. It's quite interesting. It's almost like a side effect of people hear the truth better than all the flowery niceties anyway. Like you just cuts through the noise. And I'm sure I was still coming across as quite kind, but from my perspective, I wasn't being clever. I was just being straightforward. And then it was just received well. But I was thinking about the kind of benefits of truth, because like, as you say, we can be reluctant to tell the truth and we're so worried about how it lands, how it might impact other people. But what I've been learning in this season of truth that I'm in is that, oh my goodness, it actually, everyone's better off. So I guess thinking about the example of even having like, just, we all experience a work colleague, for example, where there might have been an event, a one-off, or maybe like a repeated conflict, just something that's kind of rubbing you up the wrong way with each other. And of course, there'll be two different sides to that story. There'll be two perceptions. And I'm not sort of saying anyone's right or wrong, but we've all experienced that. And I mean, hands up to this, if you've ever had an experience like that, not spoken to that person, but you've gone off and found your pal and you're having a wee chin wag and a wee whinge about this situation, you're venting, you're letting it all out, but you're not going to tell that person directly, right? And then what happens there is, so many things when I do this, I take it home with me, I ruminate about it, it kind of affects me still, I build up resentment, I start to create a kind of I don't know, like if it happens again and again, I'll start to make this person into a bit of a villain, like a bit of a work villain. Like who even am I? I'm not in a movie, but you start making people into characters. And then what I'm finding is that if you actually just, instead of going to your pal and having a wee rant or ruminating about it at night, if you just had a kind of a fairly, obviously it's not an easy conversation to have, but a loving, truthful, honest conversation with that person and just kind of nutted out, what happened and how you experienced it. And obviously like holding space for them in a, I guess you talk about this having positive regard for them when you're having these kind of conversations, but giving them space to obviously tell you their side of things. But usually you would leave that with a beautiful understanding of each other, and actually a bridge is usually built between you. But even if it's not, even if that's not the outcome, which to be honest, I think it usually is, usually there is a bit of respect and sort of mutual adoration that comes from telling the truth in these scenarios. I feel like even if that didn't happen, at least you're not going to be ruminating about it and you're not going to be in the energy of it. There's also a lovely kind of letting go and forgiveness and all of these beautiful things, but they can only happen in that space where we're telling the truth and we're actually trying to sort out that truth with that person and find out what their truth is and be curious. But when we just take it away and ruminate about it or tell our pals about it, we're not going to be getting all that beautiful resolution. And that's what I'm finding, is that people can actually handle a lot more truth than we think they can or we give them credit for, and it's not fair.
I agree. I think we all probably understand intellectually that being honest is the most productive and professional thing to do, but also the most loving thing to do. That to hold, you know, the person that we're relating to professionally or personally with enough regard that we understand that they won't take what we say and hold it against us or take it personally or run and make more stories about it with, but that they will take it and receive it in a professional, constructive way. And this isn't to say that they'll receive it without any emotion whatsoever. There's a difference, and we've talked about this on the podcast before. There's a difference between people having an emotional reaction in any moment versus that emotional reaction actually being a reflection of what they truly believe and their kind of final verdict on the situation. So to trust that people can receive our opinion and not make that opinion mean a breakdown in our relationship, that something's wrong in the relationship, but instead recognize that if you are honest with somebody, it's a sign that you're actually invested in the relationship. To be honest with somebody else is showing that you want them to receive this information and be aware of this information because you plan to have an ongoing, prosperous relationship here on. That's one thing. And the other thing is, it's got that implicit trust in that action to give somebody some information that might be difficult to hear or difficult to say. It implies that you trust them with that information, and you trust them with all the things that come with the content of what you've said. So I think that we understand that. And I believe that we understand that because for most people, we would say that we would want to know the truth. No matter how ugly it is, no matter how bad it is, most of us would say that we wouldn't want to know the truth from anybody in our lives. If given the choice, even if it's hard, we would want to know that. And so we often want to know the truth because that's what gives us our agency. It's what helps us make the best decisions about not only ourselves and our situation, but the decisions that involve that other person too. And when we recognize that we would want to know the truth, that's what we would want the most, then we can see that when other people tell the truth and when we choose to tell the truth to other people, that is the most respectful thing that we can do. We're actually treating people how we would want to be treated. So as I think the challenge with this is, what gets in the way is not whether we think it's a good idea or not, but the fears that confuse us in that situation. And you mentioned them at the start, these fears that are dressed up as these niceties. We say, oh, but I want to be kind. I don't want to be mean. I want to be pleasant and polite. I want to be easygoing. I want to be happy. I don't want to hurt them. And I would challenge everybody to really look at those excuses, those thoughts that get in the way of you telling the truth, and examine them. Because, you know, even one of the most compelling ones, which is, I don't want to hurt them. When you reflect on how much you would want to know the truth, you'd want somebody else to respect you enough to tell you the truth, then you can see how actually perhaps the most hurtful thing in this situation is for you to not tell them the truth. And the most respectful thing is for you to say what's true for you and Allow them to have whatever emotional reaction might come with that, but give them the choice, give them their agency back, give them the honesty, the respect, the trust, and the investment in your relationship to tell them the truth.
Absolutely. Everyone would want to know the truth. And like you say, it is just such a beautiful trust building exercise as well. It's a signal of trust, and it's a signal of wanting to work on things. Like that gets received even if you don't have to say it out loud. That is clearly obvious in your intentions if you're doing this in a professional and kind way. And I just absolutely love that. And that really resonated with me. I don't want to hurt them. But then I think about like, oh, if you were talking about them to somebody and then that got back to them somehow, that's a million times more hurtful. And that's not even who I would personally want to be showing up as. But have I done that? Yes, of course I have. Like that's a horrible thing. But would I do it now? I think I will be less inclined to do it now. But I guess a little caveat that I would put to this is I don't think this necessarily applies when you don't feel safe. Like if someone is a bully or a narcissist or something like that, and we're not talking about that. We're talking about someone who you think truly in their heart of hearts, do you think that they would be quite horrified if you highlighted this behavior to them? And usually, like if the answer is, I actually think they would be, then that's probably a safe situation. Yeah, maybe that's a bit dicey. We're not sort of professionals in this respect, are we, Becc? Maybe you are, I'm not. But I guess if you feel safe to tell the truth and you think that they're going to meet it with a reasonable level of mutual respect, then I think now I would be saying I'm going to be proceeding in my life by telling the truth more and having these more difficult conversations, because on the other side of the conversation you're relieved and you actually feel that they weren't as difficult as you thought they were going to be.
And with that being said, there are consequences to telling the truth. There are. And you actually, the action of telling the truth signals trust. You're doing that, trusting them to do with that information what is also respectful and good for you. And also, when you do share a truth, and I guess this is why it's such a beautiful, trusting act, you do make yourself vulnerable to what they will do with that information. And some people will not handle it well. That is the truth. And at the end of the day, we don't get to control how they show up. So I like what you said there, Kristeen. Thank you. We do want to be calculated sounds mischievous. We do want to be considerate with when we choose to tell the truth, and in particular to consider it with other people, particularly, our jobs, we do difficult jobs in clinical medicine and emotions run high at the best of times. And so being considerate with when you choose to tell the truth is another part of this situation. But we really did just want to highlight today what doesn't seem obvious, which is that telling the truth is really kind. And to give you something a bit provocative that hopefully will make this land a bit stronger, is thinking about the opposite of telling the truth, which is lying, and thinking about how unkind lying is. So if you're getting stuck and you feel like those objections about why it's nicer and more pleasant and easier to not tell the truth are coming up, it might be helpful as a little bit of a mind trick to flip it the other way and realize how not telling the truth is lying, and how kind do you think lying is. It's not to say that all of our opinions are always relevant to everybody else. Kristeen and I definitely don't believe that. But definitely, a lot of I don't even believe probably 80% of the thoughts that run through my mind in the day, right? Like 80% of my thoughts, they're not well-considered, reasoned thoughts. I like to distinguish when I coach between my brain having thoughts and me actually thinking. Your brain just produces thoughts all day. That's just you having thoughts. But thinking is when you use some considered, thoughtful cognition to decide what you believe and produce a thought that really aligns with you. So we're definitely not advocates here for people being honest in a completely unlimited way. We're not talking about total transparency. But I think especially for the people pleasers out there, which I'm sure is a great deal of our audience, those thought errors that hold us back from telling the truth are really worth attending to. And to be honest, one of the things that actually had me start showing up more authentically through doing less people pleasing was when one of the coaches who taught me said, people pleasing is lying. People pleasing is not a kind thing. People pleasing is lying. And it's lying for self-preservation, because the idea is you're trying to please the other person. You're trying to make them pleased with you. And I know that you want to argue and tell me that it's, you know, it's for the other person. You're doing this nice thing for the other person in making them pleased. But what this episode, I hope, really highlights to you is, you know, Kristeen's brought forwards not only that telling the truth is so productive and constructive in actually producing better outcomes in your professional and personal relationships. You know, I can't imagine a personal relationship that would flourish that didn't include these hard conversations, sharing and tossing back and forth the truth forever, even if there's conflict in that. But also how much telling the truth is something that is probably something that is in your integrity. It's a way that you'd like to describe yourself as somebody who chooses to be clear and honest and candid when it matters about what matters, as opposed to somebody who fawns to the fears and chooses to lie just to maintain their impression to somebody else and maintain their sort of reputation as an easygoing, kind, lovely person.
Absolutely. So many pearls in there. And so we hope that all of you listening are inspired to move forward and with some consideration and not full transparency, as per Beck's advice, that you go forward and consider where those conversations need to happen in your life. Where's a little bit of a sprinkle of the truth going to improve things for you and your relationships at work and home? Set yourself free with the truth and build those bridges. And let us know how you go in the comments below.
Tell us, guys, is there somewhere where you can tell the truth this week? It doesn't need to be a big thing. It doesn't need to be as bold and brave as what Kristeen did, but maybe you got to tell your mother-in-law that you actually don't like that meal. Maybe you got to tell your grandmother that you actually don't like that shirt she bought you. Start small with people that you love and you trust and you know love you too. But we're challenging you this week. Tell one more truth.
I've been waiting all my life for something. I've been down the darkest roads and up